what your full name is, please?
Joseph Robert Gelsthorpe.
And where and when were you born?
I was born in Hornsea in 1941.
Can you tell me a little bit about your interests in fishing and cobbles and when that might have started?
Well, with Hornsea you've got the mere, we had a big boat in Lurk and we had the sea, so wherever you went you couldn't get away from water. And I used to play with model boats down on the mere. And then there was a cobble on the beach, and I used to look at this when I was about 12 or 13. It was owned by two school teachers who had it built, and it was the last sailing cobble, what was built in Flamborough. And in the end they gave me a job to sweep it out. Each weekend I got the job of sweeping it and cleaning it for them. And I used to look over this thing and see how it was built, and I used to ask them what was this bit for and what was that bit for. They were very good. They used to spend hours with me telling me about it. And then in the end we decided to go to sea with this. So they started taking me out to sea, sailing this cobble. So I got the bug of cobbles, being sort of the last sailing one there was along the coast.
And what age would you have been then?
I was about 14, 15.
What was it called, the cobble?
It wasn't actually named, but it was called Samothy.
Samothy? Unusual.
Come on, what's Samothy?
I don't know.
No?
No.
It's the Greek goddess of the sea.
Ah.
And they were classics teachers. So
Makes sense.
got its name.
You've done a lot of research obviously over the years. How do you think the name came about for cobble, the origins of that? Have you looked into that?
I looked fairly well back into it, and it all seems to start at St Cuthbert on Holy Island, way back about 1100. He mentioned it in his writings, and we find references right the way through Elizabethan times and through the 1600s, odd references. How far back beyond that I don't know. St Cuthbert was a Welshman. So did he bring the word mixed up with coracle and the currachs of Ireland? Did he bring the word across? Did he just start using a word, what the locals called it, so that he could get his point of what he preached? Could he get the the word over to them better if he called it a cobble? Or could it be something very simple? I mean, cobbles were about what was meant to be on the beach, so you get cobbles on the beach. But going back, it's difficult when you get back there, because the writing is it's like Chinese whispers. It got moved around each time it got mentioned.
Corrupted and changed.
Yeah.
We've got a model of a cobble. Is this one you built behind you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, I said, as soon as I retired, I would build a decent sized model where I could get detail on.
What are the traditional materials that a cobble's made from? Where would you need to start if I was going to build a cobble today?
They're built of larch timber, larch trees, and you have to go around and get a bent larch, preferably one what grows out of a valley, so that it's got a curve on it, because the planks have a lot of curve on them. And then you've got to find oak trees with natural bends in the same shape for the ribs, which isn't the easiest of things now.
So when they made these originally, a lot of people talk about them going back, they're called clinker built, which relates to Vikings design. Where would they start? What's the first actual part of building a cobble?
The first piece is what they call a ram plank, which is, I suppose in ordinary boat building terms, it's the keelson, but it's a flat boat basically, straight the way down, and it comes into the stem, a big piece of oak for a stem. So you start off with that, and there's no real drawings for cobbles, because when you do them to the tree what you've got, and to a certain extent what you've been asked to build. You can get your length off that, but a lot of the shape you do it as you go along, because you obviously, if you've got a certain shaped tree, you want to be using the most of it. You don't want a lot of waste on it.
Can I just come in there? Is there any evidence of them actually planting trees and trying to shape them for future use in building cobbles?
There was on the ribs. Yeah, the ribs. When he was apprentice, he was often sent out. You found the local oak trees around the hedgerows, and you put a Chinese windlass on them, and you pull them down into a curve, and that probably wouldn't get used for another 30, 40 years. But they did actually do that. I think the main trunk what they used, the larch, I think that was mainly, a lot of it was brought to Flamborough from Hackness and down the valleys, down around that area. I don't think they would pull them over.
Physically, how many men would you need to build a cobble?
What, now or then?
Well, looking at probably then, and looking at now, if you built one now with different technology.
In the old days, I mean, you had the problem of getting the log there, which is absolutely numb things. Bent, curved logs are really numb pieces of stuff to handle. You say he was going to build a 23, 24 foot cobble. You would need a tree just a bit longer than that, and you would have to move it. It would weigh something like 3 tons. So you've got to somehow move 3 tons of log across to a saw pit, of which they would get it over a saw pit and then start to saw the planks off it, what they needed. So it would take quite a bit of doing, because bent trees are the most awkward things there are to move. They won't roll, and they sort of tend to fall over on you if you don't get hold of them right, or you don't all pull together. So I think they would have quite a problem, sliding them around with horses and wheels. And of course, trees always grow where it's all muddy.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't get a very hard standing to work on. They're all fastened together, of course, with copper nails and rivets. What else we get? Of course, it's way easier now, where you've got cranes to pull the trees out and lift them onto saws and big sawmills. What can just slice them up? That's made it 10 times easier.
It would be quite a big job though, 200 years ago, wouldn't it, where everything was done by hand?
Yeah. Oh yeah, getting them over a saw pit and 2 men with a saw, slicing planks off, which is quite a skilled job, but there'll be a lot of work in it.
Does the boat have different names for different parts of the boat?
Yeah. Oh yes. Each piece it's nearly standard, I suppose. You've got strakes, which is the planks they usually call strakes, and you've got obviously oak gunnels. You've got to try and find a nice straight oak tree for them, because you have those to steam and fasten on. Yeah, there's lots of all the different parts are different. There's the stem, which is the bow. There's odd names like a board across the back, a scut board.
Scut
board, yeah.
And is that the board near the tiller arm, is it?
Yeah, and that's the piece that holds the whole back end together.
Right.
At the top.
Important piece.
Yes, it is relatively important, yeah.
I just wonder whether any of the words or the terminology sort of link to Norse or Scandinavia particularly.
They do, yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
So there's another connection there.
The seats are thofts. Toft is a Viking word.
Thofts.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit of Viking in it,
Mm.
or at Flamborough there is. I think it was different as you went up the coast, it would be different names.
How much, in time-wise and in monetary value, say 100 years ago, would it have cost to build their salmon cobble? Which I think the salmon cobble are the smaller cobble, aren't they?
Yeah, cobble varied from about 15 foot up to, I think 40 is about the biggest.
Would that be a herring cobble, the larger one?
The bigger ones, they did herring cobbles, they were about 40 when the herring came. 1850s I think it was, they started chasing herring down the coast, and they did build bigger ones, you know, specifically for that. Most cobbles were about 22, 23 foot, that was the sort of regular size to push down the beach, and they were quite economical to build. You'd get them out of one tree, one butt, you'd get a whole cobble out of without a lot of waste.
And that was a suitable size for manhandling, for lifting them out of the
Yeah,
sea.
for skidding down the beach.
Yeah, yeah.
Two men, sometimes two men and a lad could manage them down the beach. That's as soon as you start getting bigger, you get 40 foot and you're into all sorts of, a lot of men, and a few horses and a lot of work, and they tended to leave them afloat or pop them into a harbour.
So how long for, say, a smaller cobble to make one from my order to being completed, would you think?
It depends how many good men you've got, who you can get interested. Two of you make one in about 3 months, from start to finish. You plank them up, you get a false thing, because you soon plank them up. Within about a week, 10 days, you've got them planked up, and you've got the shape and you can see everything. But then you start with the hard work, which is fitting ribs. You've got every rib to fit, the rib must fit exact, the oak ribs, most, because you've got very thin planking on a cobble, it's something like half an inch.
Right.
And if you don't fit them exact, when you nail them on, you split your planks. So they must actually fit right the way down. In fact, you do your last fit by putting a coat of paint round and touching it up, touching your rib onto your paint work, and you can see if they fit exact. So that's the thing that takes the time, the ribbing.
They use it like engineer's glue, you know.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same.
That's right. Same.
When you're
same
scraping.
principle. That's right. You scrape, you touch dirt with the blue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do the same. So that's the really long-winded, and finding your bends is a problem, and because you want as much grain going with the rib. You don't want any cross grain because they'll tend to split later on.
Why do they do the planking first? I would have automatically thought they'd do the frame and then put the planks on. So, well, why?
Yeah. They're very wide planked cobbles. They tried to get away with as wide a plank as possible. That's why you can't use a bent rib. If you try to use a steam bent rib, like they do in most boats, you would only touch. You wouldn't touch on the laps. You'd just touch in the middle of each plank, which would be no good at all. So and you work your shape out as you're going along by eye. So you couldn't really.
You can't predict what it's going to be.
You couldn't do a set of ribs.
Yeah.
And what sort of cost over the years, you know, relatively to build?
Takes you about about just on 3 months to do one. By the time you've got to fit all the floorboards, you've got to fit ribs, you've got gunnels to steam round and fit, and you've got lots of knees, the little angle brackets as it were, what holds it together. You've got all those to fit, and they all just take quite a bit of time to do.
So if the Filey fishermen or Flamborough fishermen lost 2 or 3 cobbles, they would have lost quite a lot, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think cobbles were. They got such rough use, or they were allowed to be rolled or filled up and things like that. I don't think they did anything fancy on them. I think they were a bit of a disposable type of a boat. There was not, they didn't spend a lot of time on fancy work on them. They used a sort of cheapish timber, and you know.
So to minimise the loss if they.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you won't really lose a lot.
Yeah.
As long as it was practical and it worked. That's how they built them. Because you roll, invariably they'd get rolled over, filled, sunk. I think there'd be a fairly big turnover of, you know, they wouldn't last all that.
Would they have always had a sail? Or is it a collapsible sail, is it?
Well, that was only part they had oars. I think the smaller ones, if they were just crabbing, probably just round Flamborough Head, or just in a bay, they would probably row out. But as soon as they had to go 2 or 3 miles, they had sailors on. And of course they did sail miles. They went out to the Dogger Bank and way out at times.
In a smaller sailing cobble?
Yeah, reasonably. Well, not.
They took one of the yawls, didn't they, the cobles?
They took a little one. Yeah, if they went lining on the Dogger, they took on the big cobbles or a yawl would go, and they'd have a calf cobble tucked in, and they'd throw that overboard and go and pull it along doing the lines, because the big one would obviously be too big to pull along. They'd do the fishing, catch the fish, take it back in, and then sail home.
There's regional differences, is there, between a Northumberland and a Yorkshire cobble, and do they go anywhere else down the coast? Are they unique to that area?
The cobbles seem to go from the Scottish border down to Spurn. That was the main using area. There was slightly different. The shape is each builder had his own shape, but you could more or less tell that the Whitby ones, as further north you get, they have more slope under on the stems. The Flamborough ones tend to be vertical on the stem, and Flamborough further south you get just a constant shear. That's the top gunwale line. Constant curve. When you get up to Northumberland, you get what we call a reverse shear. It's hollow at the back and then it comes over at the front. So you can usually tell them.
What's the difference between what they call a double ender and a flat back? Why did they make the two variants?
The double ender or the Scarborough mule, they tended to be more for harbour use. It was good to have a good flat back on when you was beaching, because as you reverse